starting out in some late planted soybeans, and whether your beans were late planted or not late planted, don't give up on the beans. I mean, just because the beans look small and it's late in the season, you can still have a really good crop yet this year. Don't forget that most of the yield in soybeans is made in August. It's not made early in the season. It's not made mid-season. It's made really late in the year. So do everything you can in that soybean crop. Let's talk about some of those things you could do today.
Well, as beans continue to flower late into the season, there's more opportunity. There's more yield potential that we can protect. One of the questions I've been getting a lot this year is, hey, I sprayed for volunteer corn earlier, kind of wiped them out, but now I've got another flush coming. Is it really worth controlling volunteer corn late in the season?
Well, most likely, just like any other weed, it depends on how many you have, but don't ever forget that volunteer corn is the biggest yield robber in soybeans, weed for weed. So if you had one volunteer corn plant, one velvet leaf, one cocklebur, one water hemp, one lamb's quarter, the one that takes the most yield, it's proven fact, is volunteer corn. Just don't forget that. It's not just an eyesore, and it's super cheap to control. I mean, you're going to spend probably $2 an acre. There's nothing to it.
All right. The other thing is disease control. Now, a lot of times the best yield response we're seeing on our farm happens at about R2 or R3, so full bloom to the very first pod. But you know what? There's still more blooms coming out there. If you're in an area that has white mold issues or has other diseases that are common to your area, you may have a benefit of putting on some more fungicide later on.
Yeah, especially this year, because in the Midwest, we've had wetter conditions. So it's just ripe for disease problems. We know there's going to be all kinds of disease issues out there in soybeans, and the vast majority of farmers don't treat it. I think it's something like 95% of farmers don't spray a fungicide on their soybeans in the Midwest. And I mean, we're in the western end of the Midwest. We have even less rainfall than guys do in Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota, and we're getting a response out of fungicide every year. Chances are, if you haven't been spraying a fungicide in soybeans, you're going to get some kind of response. At least try some. Try some strips on your farm, and don't forget, even a 1 or 2 bushel gain might pay you a good return based on the soybean price we have this year.
You know, we're right in the middle of the soybean aphid run in our part of the world, where many guys are out there spraying for the first time or just finishing up with their first round through their fields. But the question is, how long do I have to keep soybean aphids out?
All the way until those soybeans start to turn color. So you need to be scouting your fields, you need to be checking for thresholds. Now certainly the threshold should be a little bit higher as you get later in the season, because the season's just about done, but you need to be scouting all the way through until those beans start to turn color.
The other thing is, as we're taking our plant tissue analysis throughout the summer, you'll see those nutrient levels go up and down. And in some of the fields, especially fields with higher yield potential, we're seeing the fertility start to tail off, especially on some of the micronutrients as we get into the reproductive stages.
Well, the thing I always tell guys with tissue testing in soybeans, it doesn't make a lot of difference when the plant is 2 inches tall. It does with corn, because corn makes its yield really early in the year. But with soybeans, it makes its yield late in the year. That's when the majority of nutrients are going to be brought into the plant. So if you tested early in your soybeans and you said, oh, everything looks good, don't let it go. You need to be tissue testing your soybean plants all the way through the end of August in a lot of areas in the country. And yes, you can do some foliar feeding. Yes, you could do some side dressing or something like that really late in soybeans and still get some response. But honestly, we've had the best luck in soybeans putting our fertility out early. Now, the last thing I wanted to comment on real quick here is every once in a while I get the question, well, you guys talk about all these things that I need to do and they all cost money. Well, look, I mean, we don't want you to spend any more money than you have to, but by the same token, with every single choice you make on the farm, and I don't care what it is, whether it's a new tractor, whether it's the seed you buy, whether it's the herbicide or insecticide you spray, every single choice, we want you to look at return on investment. Okay, if it's something that's going to make you money, do it. If it's something that's not going to make you money, don't do it. Okay, but you've got to try some of these things, otherwise how are you going to get ahead? We try all kinds of things on our farm. Just like I told you a minute ago, foliar feeding for us, we really don't do a whole lot of it because it just hasn't worked that well. But we wouldn't have known unless we tried. Okay, fungicide and insecticide, that works pretty much every time we do it, so we're doing a lot more of those kind of things. You need to experiment a little bit on your farm. Make sure you're testing new things all the time to get ahead.
One thing that will certainly give you a good return on investment is controlling our weed of the week. We'll show you how coming up next.